All right, today we're diving into a bacterium that, most of us have probably had at some point, but very few of us really get. It's this tiny little mastermind that can cause anything from a simple sore throat all the way to a full-blown, life-threatening emergency. Yep, we're talking about Streptococcus.
So, the big question is, how? How is that even possible? That's the real mystery we're going to try and solve today. How can one little germ have such a massive and, frankly, sometimes terrifying range of effects? Let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. Let's meet the culprit here, our microscopic bad guy. Now, we all just call it strep, right? But its full name is Streptococcus, and believe me, it is way more complex than you might think.
So what exactly is this thing? Well, Streptococcus is actually a super common resident of the human body. It just kind of hangs out in our throat, our gut, on our skin, and most of the time it's totally harmless. But here's the kicker. The keyword is polymorphic, and that just means it can change its shape, its strategy, and cause a huge variety of diseases. That's what makes it so interesting and, yeah, sometimes so incredibly dangerous.
You might be wondering, how does it pull all this off? Well, it's got this whole arsenal of tools. Scientists call them virulence factors. Think of it like a playbook. It's got a hyaluronic acid capsule that's basically an invisibility cloak, hiding it from your immune system. Then there's the M protein, which is like a grappling hook it uses to invade your cells. And it doesn't stop there. It churns out toxins like hemolysins that just destroy red blood cells and these super potent exotoxins that can act like superantigens. I mean, these things just crank the immune system up to 11, which can lead to toxic shock.
All right, let's start with the one we all know, and probably hate, the dreaded strep throat. Yeah, for most of us, this is our first, and hopefully our only, run-in with this particular germ. So, how do you know if it's strep or just a regular old sore throat? Well, a viral sore throat usually creeps up on you, right? And you'll probably have a cough. Strep throat, though, it hits you like a ton of bricks. It's sudden, it's super painful, and here's the big giveaway. You usually don't have a cough. And knowing that difference is absolutely crucial, because how you treat them is totally different.
The good news is the game plan for fighting it is pretty simple. There are these rapid tests that can tell you what's up in just a few minutes. If it comes back positive, you get a standard antibiotic, usually amoxicillin. But listen, this is really important. Taking that medicine isn't just about getting rid of the sore throat. It's all about stopping this bacteria from causing way more serious problems down the road. But strep doesn't just stick to the throat. Oh no, it can be a really serious problem when it decides to set up shop on our biggest organ, our skin.
So strep can cause this whole range of skin problems. You've got impetigo, which you see a lot in kids, those really contagious kind of crusty yellow sores. Then, if you're dealing with a strain that makes a certain toxin, you can get scarlet fever. It's known for this rash that feels like sandpaper or like granite. And then it can go even deeper into the skin and cause something called erysipelas, which is this really painful swollen red patch that's super distinct from the skin around it.
But all of that is nothing compared to what can happen when a skin infection that seems minor just goes horribly wrong, when it turns into a real life or death emergency.
And that's where we get to necrotizing fasciitis. Yeah, the name is just as terrifying as the reality. You probably know it by its other name, flesh-eating disease. This is when the bacteria gets deep down under the skin and just starts destroying tissue at a shocking speed. It can lead to gangrene, septic shock. I mean, it's rare, thank goodness, but it is absolutely devastating. And the stats here are pretty grim. Even with all our modern medicine, the mortality rate is a shocking 30%. 30%. That's a huge number, and it's just a brutal reminder of how destructive this germ can be.
Okay, so what happens when this thing breaks through our first lines of defense, it gets past the throat, past the skin, and just goes completely rogue, getting into our bloodstream? And there are a few different ways it can get there. A cut or a break in the skin is the most common way in, but an infection that starts in the throat or even a dental problem can also open the door. The main thing to get here is that once it's in your blood, that bacterium basically has an all-access pass to go anywhere it wants in your body.
And one of the absolute worst places it can end up is the heart.
This causes a condition called endocarditis, and the signs of it are, well, they're really weird and specific. You can get these painful little bumps on your fingertips called Osler's nodes, or painless red spots on your palms and the soles of your feet, which are Janeway lesions. It can even change the whole shape of your fingernails in a process called digital clubbing. Just wild.
Now, just to put the danger here into perspective, take a look at this. We talked about necrotizing fasciitis, right? That had a 30% mortality rate. Well, if the bacteria's toxin set off what's called streptococcal toxic shock syndrome, that mortality rate can shoot up to 60%. It can literally double. And in that situation, it's not even just the bacteria doing the damage anymore. It's your own body's immune system going into complete overdrive, and that's what causes catastrophic organ failure.
But the story doesn't always stop there. And this is where things get really, really weird. In this kind of crazy twist, sometimes the worst damage from a strep infection actually happens weeks after you've already beaten it. So what happens when the real danger isn't the germ itself, but your own body's confused reaction to it? This gets us into this fascinating area called post-streptococcal syndromes.
There's this old-school medical saying that just perfectly captures the most famous one, rheumatic fever. It goes, "It licks the joints and bites the heart." It's such a great description because that's what it does. It causes this joint pain that comes and goes, but it can leave behind permanent, life-threatening damage to the valves of your heart.
And this immune system mix-up can show up in a few different ways. It's not just the heart. It can go after the kidneys, causing something called glomerulonephritis, or it can even affect the brain, leading to these weird involuntary movements known as Sydenham's chorea. The most important thing to get here is that these aren't active infections. It's not like the bacteria is still there. This is like a destructive echo of an infection that's long gone.
So let's zoom out for a second and put this all in perspective. Our fight against this tiny little enemy, Streptococcus, has been a long one, and it's definitely not over.
I mean, for most of human history, these really severe complications were just tragically common. The thing that changed everything, the absolute game changer, was penicillin. All of a sudden, we could treat a simple strep throat, and because of that, these awful after effects like rheumatic fever became so much rarer in a lot of places around the world.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe most important question. The discovery of penicillin, of antibiotics, was a massive turning point in our fight against strep. No question. But we live in a world now where antibiotic resistance is a huge growing threat. So you have to ask yourself, could this ancient shape-shifting enemy one day get all its power back?